With me now is Bob Rae, Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. Good morning. Thank you so much for being with us. Tell us more about the motion and where does Canada stand on this motion for Russia to withdraw?
Well, we're sponsoring the motion together with dozens of other countries, and we will be voting this afternoon on the resolution. It's really about the need for a peace agreement that is based on the Charter, not based on Russian occupation, but based on the principles of territorial integrity and of national sovereignty of Ukraine. And I think the resolution will receive a lot of support. We've been listening to speeches over the last 2 days. Minister Joly spoke for Canada yesterday, making it very clear that crimes have been committed, that the crime of aggression is being committed, and that there needs to be support for the resolution. And I think we'll see a very strong vote later on this afternoon.
Cynics may hear this and think, yes, of course there will be support for this. There's so much support in general for Ukraine, but the one person that will ignore this is Vladimir Putin. So, Mr. Rae, what is the point of having this motion, having this resolution, when the person that it matters most to is probably just going to slough it off?
Well, I don't think we can afford as a world to take that attitude. The fact is that we have laws in place. There's an application to the International Court of Justice from Ukraine, which Canada and the Netherlands in particular are intervening to support. There's the activities of the International Criminal Court. Mr. Putin can't slough off, not a matter of global opinion, but he can't slough off the reality of the global legal system, which is going to, as it grinds, yes, it grinds slowly, but it does grind, and it does get there. And I'm convinced that we're going to be able to hold Russia and Mr. Putin personally accountable for what's taken place. A serious crime is being committed, and as the prosecutor for the ICC told us yesterday, Ukraine is a crime scene, and there's only one guilty party in that crime scene, and that's Russia, whose leader is Putin.
And so what are the consequences, and when will he be held accountable?
Well, I can't give you a date. I mean, obviously these things take a lot of time and a lot of effort, but the fact is there's a war going on right now. That's one way of holding into account. There's the resilience of the Ukrainian people. That's another way of holding into account. And finally, I think there will be action taken. The criminal investigations are underway. I don't think there's any way that Mr. Putin can avoid responsibility for what he is doing and the crimes that he has committed and the people that have been killed on his watch, on his command, under his leadership. And I think these are very serious events that the world is taking seriously. And I think the fact that we have a vote today is another sign of where world opinion is. And I think that opinion will be as strong as it was at the beginning of the war, which I think is significant.
I want to ask you lastly, because I was reading a piece that you wrote, and you concluded it by saying that the off-ramp for this is a Russian defeat and a Ukrainian victory, aided and assisted by countries committing to the defense of the rule of law and the cause of democracy. Again, as we are at this one-year point, Mr. Rae, what are your thoughts on the strengthening of NATO right now, and really how this war in Ukraine, started by Russia, has really shifted the power and the relationship of countries really around the world, but specifically NATO and the West?
Well, I think Putin made two major miscalculations. The first one was that the Ukrainians would collapse very quickly. And the second was that the West would be divided. And I think, in fact, what we're seeing is the opposite. I think the Ukrainians have taught the world a lesson in democracy and in resilience and courage and in the importance of fighting for freedom. And I also think that NATO itself has stepped up in a way that maybe even NATO itself didn't realize was possible at the beginning of the war. And the coordination and the way in which the alliance is coming together and holding firm, I think we'll see more signs of that at the NATO meeting in Vilnius, which is taking place in the middle of July. But right through this spring, which is going to be a difficult spring because of the Russian insurgency and because of the Ukrainian response, it's going to be very difficult. But I do think that no person has done more to build NATO than Vladimir Putin. We have two new members. I hope very much that in the future we'll have a third, and there we're going to be much stronger in the face of Russian aggression.
Ambassador, thank you so much. Bob Rae is Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, joining us from New York.